Okay, so the next bit that we have to do is an enclosure for the gearbox. We've got to hold on to the bearings, and we've got to hold the spindles, the spinny bits in the right orientation. So we're going to do that out of aluminum, hopefully, if all goes well. And we're going to try to machine majority of it, in fact, most of it, if not all of it, on the CNC. I don't cut CNC. I have not cut a lot of aluminum on my machine, so this could turn out to be a experiment in dismal returns. We'll see. But for the moment, I'm optimistic, and so we'll bring you in a little closer, and I'll show you what I've got on the table. So we've got our clear bed table on the CNC. We put our spoil board here because there are a few parts of it that I'm going to cut straight through all the way into, and I don't like cutting into my table, so I just put it on a scrap of 3/4 inch MDF, and from the looks of things it's really flat and flat enough for this job. And so then we screwed to the MDF our chunk of 3/8 inch 6061 aluminum, and this is what we'll cut our parts out of. And I'll show you that momentarily as I get set up. So we've got chucked in here a tiny little 1/8 inch end mill. It's a flat bottom end mill. It's got 2 flutes, and I'm not sure if it's built for aluminum, but we're going to give it a shot and see what happens. Alright, so now we're going to zero, this time on the bottom. So we're going to zero on this plate, on this surface first, because we want to make sure when we cut we won't ever go through in some of these areas. There's a few places where we don't want to actually go through. So we're going to get the plate zeroed out here. Okay, so we're going to zero to the surface, which is basically the bottom of this aluminum plate here. So then everything will be up from that. So we take a little strip of paper and we get close, and we just inch down just very carefully, very gingerly, very few steps. I know I'm a little ways away right now, so I'm moving in bigger chunks, but basically moving it like 1,000 at a time until we feel the paper starts to kind of grab just a little bit. I can feel it kind of grabbing right now, just barely. So we're going to give it just a little bit more. One more, and right about that feels about right. And it really is kind of a feel thing. Yeah, that's perfect. So now we're going to call that 0. Actually, it'll be 3/4 thousandths off of 0. We'll call that 0. Okay, so now we've got ourselves a little X in the center of our workpiece, and we're going to move our gantry over until we get right near it to zero the X and the Y. We've already got Z 0, and we just need to do X and Y. And we're not going to get super close because we don't need to. We're not going to get the Z super close because we don't want to snap the bit. And I think we're pretty darn close right there. We're going to go up just a bit, and I think we're ready to do this. So that now has our position set. Now we can load our G-code. Alright, so we've copied over our G-code files. I've got 5 separate files here. The first one is the through holes, and then the the next one will be the bearing socket, and then the rabbets, and the lightning cutouts, the little lightning holes, and then the cutouts themselves. So first thing we're going to do is the through holes. Okay, so we go in Mach 3, we load G-code, we go to the directory, we put our G-code files in, and bring out the through holes, and it'll load it up. So one thing I'm going to do is, just to be sure that I am off these screws here. Can you see those? Yeah, you can see those. Just to be sure I'm off these screws, I'm going to move this center line that way a bit because all of our materials are going to be cut out of this section. So we'll move over about, I'm going to just roughly do it about 1/2 inch, right about there. Call that our new 0. And then we can regen toolpath. And this is where we start to hope things are going to work the way we want them to. And I'm going to grab some WD-40. Actually, we're going to try a few things because I've heard denatured alcohol works well as well. So we'll try a little of everything here. See what sticks, or doesn't for that matter. This could prove to be a little bit messy, but we'll give it a go here. So bear with it, and we'll start the cutting. Well, not too bad. Messy is all heck. Very messy. I'm covered in aluminum right now. I'll show you in a minute all the mess. But for the most part, this is the best performance in aluminum I've had so far. And this is kind of an experimental bit that does or does not cut all the way through, it looks like. So at first I think denatured alcohol worked okay. I've seen it somewhere that it works pretty well, and I think it did. But getting it into place quickly enough and not wasting a bunch, I think is tough. And then for this area, I did nothing but compressed air, and it seemed to work pretty well for these tiny holes, but it didn't do so good on the larger things. WD-40 seems to be the trick, and I'd seen that before in a couple of places. So. I think we're going to probably stick with WD-40. It's messy, but I think manageable. I think I'm never going to blow aluminum shavings with compressed air anymore. I'll show you this mess that we've got here. So over here on the table saw, you'll see there's shavings everywhere, all over the place. And then up here on the side wall of the CNC, you can see all those little sprinkles. And it's because I was blowing the dust out, or the shavings out, with compressed air, and I don't think I'll be doing that again. But ultimately the cuts came out pretty good. So we're going to get set up for the next cut now. Alright, so this next cut will be the rabbet area for not really a rabbet, it's a socket. Hopefully it's going to be accurate enough to press my bearing into. This is the area for the bearing to go into. This is for the vertical bearing that goes in. So we're going to set up to cut this one again and stick with just WD-40 for coolant, I think. So here we go. let's see how this bearing fits. I hope it's a snug. Ooh, that is beautiful. Yeah, that'll press in just nicely. Got it in one, boys. That'll do. That'll do, pig. All right, so we have our holes through now, and I can put the screws in to hold this waste portion down. And the idea here is just to keep it from flopping around when it cuts through. And we'll get that going, and then we'll go from there. Once that's in, we'll the next set of cuts are going to be the rabbets around this area and these areas to cut the shelves that they sit on. So we'll load that up, and then we'll have you cut those. That is the rabbets, and there was some pretty good footage on that. There was a few places where the cutter was getting a little bit clogged or taking too, it was just something was jamming up. I think it was probably the aluminum shavings getting stuck to the cutter, and a quick little jolt of WD-40 took care of it. So I'm very encouraged by what I'm getting here. Cutting aluminum is going to be no problem, I think. Surface finish isn't smooth or smashingly great, but it's not terrible. It's serviceable. So I think the next thing we'll do is get set up to cut the, I think we're ready for the profile, in fact. There's one other piece. Oh no, the waste bit. We'll cut these little bits out first. And then we'll be ready to cut the whole thing out. So let me set you up for that. All right, so now we're going to cut out these little triangular shaped waste boxes here, and then we'll show you that next. Well, that proved a little bit more challenging than the the rabbets were. The heavy slotting, it was deep slotting, the bit really did want to jam up a little bit there, so I used up a lot of coolant in that particular operation. But in the end, I cut it through, so that one should be okay. Now we'll set up for the profile cutouts, which should leave a little bit behind, so we'll move that next. All right, so we were set up for doing the final cutouts. I'm going to pull back a bit and show you the mess we have here real quick. Take a look over here. We have piles of this crap everywhere. So I put up some barricades to try to keep it off the table saw and stuff, but I think it's going to be fruitless. So anyway, we're going to get set up for the final cutout parts, and we'll be back with you. The profile cuts came out. They're done. It is a big mess, but the cuts were successful. I had a few spots where in these really deep slotting operations, the aluminum likes to get sticky to the bit, and it was getting caught on the cutter and holding it up. So it was kind of jamming a little bit, but it was easily remedied with, in fact, you can see some of that stuff right there where it's a mess. Where WD-40, just spray some of that in there and all of a sudden everything's fine again. So we're going to get this cleaned up. I basically, when I cut them out, I think I left 10 thou to use as an onion skin, so I didn't have to have so many tabs and things like that. And we'll pull them off here and see how we did. There's a little bit of onion skin left on these bits, even though I told it to cut through. The material isn't consistently thick. Shouldn't be a problem for this though. Yeah, that's very barely in there. It's coming out. That left barely any. It's a good thing I screwed things down. So our surface is not awesome, but it's also not critical. It's not super critical. I'd like it to be smoother, but not bad for my first real cuts in aluminum. So unless I cannot cut it any other way, I think this method is really only viable when I absolutely have to. There's a couple areas where things got a little bit icky. So there was a few spots where that one will come out pretty easily, as I had designed it to. So you'll see here, let's turn it this way. These are all the parts that we cut out. It's messy, I'll say that. It's definitely messy. And the surface finish is pretty bad. It's good enough for what I'm going to do, but I wouldn't do it for a customer. That's terrible customer size. It's bad for that, but I think this will work for what I need it to do. So the next bit I have to do is cut these out of here. I'm going to do them on the bandsaw, and then I'll just file this flaky stuff smooth. It's not very thick. It's maybe 100 thou, or maybe 10 thou, maybe 20 thou. Yeah, see, we've got, I don't know if you can see the discoloration here. Get that into frame. See there? Right there? That is indicating that we are very close, and in some areas the bit got a little warm, which deformed some of this. So we're right on the edge of our ability there, I think. So we'll free these from their slab, and then I'll summarize and get back to you.